Ever imagined owning something so valuable it ended up in a museum?
Oh, yeah.
Well, today we're diving into a story about exactly that. A priceless historical artifact
Mm,
hidden in plain sight for centuries.
wow.
And not just anywhere,
Yeah.
but within a famous painting.
Really?
Yeah. So it's a real art history mystery
Okay.
that unfolded at Hever Castle,
Bever Castle. Okay.
the childhood home of Anne Boleyn,
Right.
curators there,
Sure.
made an incredible discovery
Okay.
about a book featured in Hans Holbein's iconic portrait of Thomas Cromwell.
Hans Holbein. Wow.
You know, Holbein, the painter of all those amazing Tudor portraits.
Of course. Yeah.
So this book,
Mm.
what's the big deal?
Well, the book and the painting,
Yeah.
it isn't just some random prop.
Yeah.
It's a genuine 16th century book of hours.
A book of hours.
Yeah. A prayer book owned by Cromwell himself
Okay.
and remarkably well preserved.
Wow, that's wild.
It is. It's like finding a time capsule tucked away in a masterpiece.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
A real piece of Tudor history
Yeah.
hidden in plain sight all this time.
Mm.
But wait, how did the curators at Hever even realize what they were looking at?
Well, it all started with another book of hours.
Okay.
This one belonging to Anne Boleyn.
Uh-huh.
The Hever Castle team was studying it,
Okay.
and one of the curators happened to be visiting the Wren Library at Trinity College in Cambridge.
Okay.
There, they saw Holbein's portrait of Cromwell
You're right.
and had a truly remarkable realization.
So they're looking at this portrait and suddenly what? They recognize the book.
Exactly. The intricate details of the book in the painting
Wow.
matched up perfectly
Right.
with a real book of hours
Oh,
owned
yeah.
by the library.
So they had the actual book right there.
They did. It was an uncanny coincidence.
Wow.
And it sparked a whole investigation into the book's history.
This is like something out of a detective novel.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
So how did this book, Cromwell's book, end up at Trinity College?
Well, the library records show it was donated in 1660
Okay.
by a descendant of Rafe Sadler.
Rafe Sadler.
You might remember Sadler
Uh-huh.
as Cromwell's close friend and confidant.
Okay.
Cromwell even asked Sadler to be godfather to two of his sons.
Oh, wow. So a close connection there.
Very close.
But Cromwell was executed for treason, right?
Yes, he was.
Wouldn't all his possessions have gone to the crown?
You're absolutely right. That was the typical practice.
Right.
However, in Cromwell's case, there's some evidence
Right.
suggesting that certain belongings were removed before the king's men arrived to arrest him.
Oh, so like a friend helping him out?
Exactly. It's quite possible that Sadler,
Yeah.
out of loyalty to his fallen friend,
Okay.
ensured the book's safety.
Wow, that speaks volumes about their friendship.
It really does.
Risking royal displeasure to preserve a treasured book.
A very loyal friend.
Yeah. So tell me more about this book itself.
Yeah.
What makes it so special?
Well, this book of hours
Yeah.
is a fascinating artifact in its own right.
Okay.
It was printed in Paris in 1528
Okay.
by a renowned printer named Geoffrey Hardouin.
Okay.
But what truly sets it apart is its extravagant binding.
Extravagant, huh?
Yes.
What does that mean exactly?
We're talking silver gilt,
Wow.
garnets,
Okay.
and incredibly intricate details.
It's like decked out.
Decked out. This wasn't just a simple prayer book.
Yeah.
It was a statement piece, a symbol of wealth and status.
Fit for a king, you might say.
You might say that?
I mean, Cromwell had worked his way up
Oh,
to
yeah.
the top of the Tudor world.
Yeah.
He could certainly afford a bit of luxury.
He certainly could. That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it leads us to an even more intriguing aspect of this story.
Oh.
Here's something that really surprised the researchers.
Okay.
Catherine of Aragon
Mhm.
and Anne Boleyn,
Right.
two of Henry VIII's wives,
Yeah.
also owned nearly identical books of hours
Really?
printed by the same Parisian printer.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Cromwell,
Uh-huh.
Catherine of Aragon,
Yes.
and Anne Boleyn,
Mm-hmm.
all with similar extravagant books of hours.
Yes.
That can't be a coincidence, can it?
It's certainly a remarkable discovery, and
Yeah.
it begs the question,
Okay.
who commissioned these elaborate bindings
Right.
and why?
Yeah. Was it Henry VIII himself?
Possibly.
Perhaps as a display of his wealth and power?
Could be.
Or maybe it was a gift for the French king,
That's another possibility.
engaging in some courtly diplomacy.
It's a fascinating puzzle.
Or could it have been Anne Boleyn trying to secure allies as she was vying to become queen?
It's possible.
This is getting more and more intriguing.
It really is.
But before we get too caught up in
Yeah.
whodunit,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about the man
Okay.
who actually created this luxurious binding.
Ah, yes. Pierre Mangat goldsmith to the French king himself, Francis I.
Okay.
The researchers were able to pinpoint the date of Cromwell's binding to sometime between December 1529
Okay.
and December 1530.
And that's significant
Because Mango, aside from his royal connection,
Right.
also had ties to the Boleyn family.
Oh, really?
He even made a gold chain for Anne's brother George.
So we have this web of connection
Yes, a tangled web.
between Cromwell, the Boleyns,
Yeah.
and the French court,
Uh-huh.
all centered around this beautifully bound Book of Hours.
It's quite a story.
But there's something else that strikes me as odd.
What's that?
Cromwell, the architect of the English Reformation,
Right.
the man who broke England away from the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
he's carrying around a very Catholic prayer book.
It does seem paradoxical, doesn't it?
It does.
This Book of Hours really challenges our understanding
Yeah.
of Cromwell's religious beliefs.
It's almost as if he was trying to play both sides.
It's possible.
Or maybe he was just deeply conflicted about his faith.
Precisely, this discovery prompts us to think more deeply about Cromwell's faith and the complex religious climate of that era.
So was his commitment to the Reformation purely political?
It might have been.
Or did he perhaps hold on to certain Catholic practices in private?
We can only speculate.
This one little book is opening up a whole Pandora's box of questions.
It certainly is.
It's a window into not just Cromwell's life,
right.
but also the power dynamics and relationships of the entire Tudor court.
Absolutely.
The books owned by Cromwell, Anne and Catherine, they weren't just religious texts.
No, they weren't.
They were tangible symbols of their status, their connections, and perhaps even their aspirations.
It's amazing how much these objects can reveal.
It is. It makes these historical figures feel so much more real, so much more human.
They were people, too.
But I think we need to take a closer look at that question.
Okay.
Of who commissioned these books and why.
Mm.
The answer could rewrite our understanding
It could.
of this pivotal period in English history.
Absolutely, I agree.
So let's start by considering the obvious candidate.
Okay.
Cromwell himself.
Cromwell, all right.
He had amassed considerable wealth
Yes.
and influence by this time.
He was a powerful man.
Could he have commissioned the binding as a way of solidifying his status?
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
He was a shrewd and ambitious man.
Right.
And a lavish book like this would have been a way of broadcasting his success.
But let's not forget Henry VIII.
Oh, of course not.
He was always eager to display his power
Always.
and magnificence.
Yes.
Could he have gifted these books to key figures in his court
Possibly.
as a way of reinforcing his authority?
That's another plausible scenario.
Right.
Henry was known for his extravagant gifts, and these books would have been a way of demonstrating his favor and generosity.
However, we can't rule out other possibilities either. Remember, this was a time of great political and religious upheaval.
Absolutely.
Alliances were shifting and everyone was vying for power.
Everyone wanted to come out on top.
Exactly. The gift giver could have been someone with a vested interest in currying favor with Cromwell and or even Catherine.
That's true.
It's like a game of
It's
chess
a very dangerous game.
with each player making strategic moves to gain an advantage.
Absolutely.
And this Book of Hours,
yeah.
with its intricate connections and mysterious origins, might just hold the key
It might.
to understanding the game's ultimate outcome.
It very well could. So we were talking about who might have gifted these amazing books of ours.
Right to Cromwell and Boleyn.
Catherine of Aragon.
And it's such a puzzle.
It is.
You know, thinking about how fancy these books were,
yeah.
it makes me realize how important books were back then.
Oh, yeah. During the Tudor era.
Yeah, exactly. In a world without the internet.
Right. No TV.
Not even a lot of people could read. Books were really special.
They were precious.
It's so easy to forget that now with all our digital stuff.
Yeah, we're spoiled.
But for Cromwell, a beautiful book wasn't just about the words.
Right. It was more than that.
It's like a status symbol.
Exactly like a luxury car today.
Or a fancy handbag.
Yeah, something to show off.
Exactly. And the fact that Cromwell's book is so prominent in that Holbein portrait.
Oh, in the painting.
Yeah, really emphasizes that.
It's like Holbein is saying, look at this guy.
He's made it.
He's powerful, sophisticated.
And this book proves it.
That's a great way to put it.
Like a visual resume of Cromwell's rise to the top.
From humble beginnings to the heights of Tudor power.
It's amazing.
It is, and it speaks to Holbein's skill, too.
As an artist.
Yeah, he knew how to use symbolism.
To get his message across.
Exactly, he understood the power of image.
So Henry VIII, when he commissioned that portrait of Cromwell, wasn't just getting a painting.
Right.
He was making a statement.
About Cromwell's importance, about the strength of his government.
And Cromwell, by choosing what to include, was also solidifying his own position.
Showing his loyalty to the king.
It's all very strategic.
Oh, very much so.
Makes me think of those Instagram influencers today.
Oh, yeah.
Always trying to look a certain way.
Curating their image.
To get more followers.
To build their brand.
But I bet the stakes were higher for Cromwell.
Oh, yeah. Definitely one wrong move back then.
Yeah, and you could lose your head.
Not just your followers.
Which brings us back to that puzzle of Cromwell's faith.
The mastermind of the English Reformation.
With a Catholic prayer book.
It's a head-scratcher.
How do we make sense of that?
Well, maybe his commitment to the Reformation wasn't just about his personal belief.
You mean it was more political?
Possibly. Remember, this was a crazy time.
Yeah. Lots of upheaval.
And the lines between personal belief and political strategy.
Blurred.
Exactly.
So maybe he was more focused on Henry VIII's power.
Than on religious debates.
That makes sense.
And remember, we talked about how he might have still held on to some Catholic practices?
Yeah, in private.
Right. It's important to remember that the shift from Catholicism to Protestantism wasn't overnight.
It took time.
It was gradual, confusing for a lot of people.
Even those in power.
Exactly. Imagine trying to figure out your faith when the king is declaring himself head of the church.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is, and Cromwell was right in the middle of it all.
As Henry's right-hand man.
Which is why this discovery of his Book of Hours is so important.
It changes how we see him.
It encourages us to see him as a complex person.
Not just a label.
Right. We tend to simplify history.
Heroes and villains.
Reformers versus traditionalists.
But it's usually more complicated.
Much more. Cromwell was brilliant.
Ruthless.
And his beliefs are still debated today.
This Book of Hours doesn't give us all the answers.
But it adds to the mystery.
It makes us rethink things.
And that's what's so great about history.
Yeah, always discovering something new.
Challenging our understanding.
Speaking of new evidence.
Yes.
What about Anne Boleyn?
Yes, she had a similar book.
What do we know about her belief?
Well, Anne was known for her strong religious convictions. Yeah. She supported reform.
Like Cromwell.
Yes, but even among reformers, there were differences.
Okay.
Anne was a big reader of Protestant texts.
Oh, wow. Smuggled in from Europe.
Exactly.
So they both wanted to break with the Catholic Church.
Right.
But maybe had different ideas about the new Church of England.
Precisely. And those differences could have caused tension.
Even conflict.
At the court.
It's like a power struggle.
With beliefs mixed in.
Did they ever talk about their religious views?
We don't have records of their conversations.
Okay.
But we know they worked closely together.
Cromwell helped Anne rise to power.
And helped her marry Henry.
So they probably talked about religion.
It would have been unavoidable given the circumstances.
And they both had those fancy Parisian books of hours.
A possible connection.
Could it be a way to show their commitment to reform?
Maybe even if they disagreed on some things.
Like a secret handshake.
A symbol of their alliance.
More than just prayer books.
A way to bond.
In the middle of all that chaos.
Exactly. They needed each other.
That's fascinating.
Like a puzzle.
With all these pieces.
Each one revealing a little more.
About these figures in history.
Their motivations.
Their relationships.
But if Anne was so pro-reform, why would she even own a Catholic prayer book?
That's a good question.
It goes back to what we said.
About the shift not being so clear-cut?
Exactly. Maybe for Anne, this book was a link to her past.
To her Catholic upbringing.
As she embraced a new religious future.
That's a great point.
It reminds us they weren't just political players.
They were real people.
With their own journeys.
Speaking of journeys, we haven't talked about Catherine of Aragon's book.
True. Hers is interesting.
Because she was the one Henry was trying to divorce.
To marry Anne.
And she was a devout Catholic.
Opposed to the Reformation.
So how does her book fit in?
Well, it could just be a reflection of her status.
As queen?
A book fit for a queen.
But knowing her beliefs, maybe it was more than that.
Possibly a symbol of resistance.
Against all the changes?
Remember, she was devoted to her faith.
And saw the annulment as a betrayal.
So maybe this book,
a gift from a supporter,
gave her comfort.
In a difficult time.
It's a powerful image.
It makes her story even sadder.
She was fighting for everything.
Her marriage.
Her faith.
Her place in history.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about the big names.
The kings and queens.
It's about everyone.
Caught up in these events.
Each with their own story.
And this deep dive
has been amazing.
So many connections.
Challenging what we thought we knew.
But we're not done yet.
There's still more to uncover.
About these books. And the secrets they hold. It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is.
These books of ours.
Yeah.
They're like these little windows.
Into the past.
Into such a crazy time in history.
A turbulent time.
And, you know, I keep thinking about Cromwell.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who led the English Reformation.
Yeah.
But he had this Catholic prayer book.
It challenges everything we thought we knew.
It does. It makes you realize that it wasn't just a clean break.
From Catholicism to Protestantism.
Exactly. It was messier.
Much more nuanced.
And we always hear about the Reformation.
Right.
Like it was just an English thing.
Right.
But this book.
Yeah. Printed in Paris.
Bound by a French guy.
It reminds us it was a European movement.
A much bigger story.
Absolutely. Those connections to the French court.
They're really interesting.
They are.
Because Henry VIII.
Yeah.
He wanted Francis I on his side.
He needed allies, especially with that whole annulment thing.
Right, trying to get rid of Catherine.
So a gift like this book of ours could have been a big deal.
A way to show friendship.
Shared interests.
Makes you wonder about these religious objects.
At a time of so much change.
When people didn't know what to believe.
Right.
Maybe these books were comforting.
A sense of familiarity.
We tend to think everyone jumped on the Protestant bandwagon.
But it wasn't that simple.
No, it took time.
A gradual shift.
So these books helped people adjust.
Possibly a bridge between the old and the new.
And that brings us back to Cromwell, owning this book.
Yeah.
It makes him seem more complex.
Not just a ruthless politician.
Like maybe he still held on to some Catholic beliefs.
We can't know for sure, but it's an interesting thought.
It shows that even the people at the top,
the ones making history,
they've had their own struggles.
Their own doubts.
And this one book, it gives us a peek.
Into their lives.
Cromwell, Anne Boleyn, Catherine of Aragon.
3 powerful people.
It's amazing.
It is how these objects can connect us to the past.
And it's not just about the famous people.
No, think of all the others.
Who held these books?
Read them, prayed with them.
It's incredible.
It is.
This book of ours, it's raised so many questions.
More than answers.
But that's what makes it so exciting.
It keeps us curious.
It makes us want to learn more.
To dig deeper.
To challenge what we thought we knew.
History is never truly settled.
That's so true. So where do we go from here?
Well, I think learning more about Pierre Mango would be great.
The bookbinder.
Yes. He was connected to both courts.
French and English.
And to the Molins.
Understanding him.
Could unlock more secrets.
And what about that missing jewel?
From the cover.
Yeah. Could it be a clue?
Maybe tracking it down could lead to other discoveries.
This whole thing is a good reminder.
About what?
That history is never really over.
It's always unfolding.
There's always more to learn.
More connections to make.
More stories to uncover.
And that's the beauty of it.
It keeps us engaged.
It challenges us.
So for our listeners out there,
we
want to hear from you.
What did you find most interesting?
What questions do you have?
Let us know, and maybe even subscribe.
For more deep dives into history's mysteries.
Until next time.
Happy exploring.